Hi BookTube, my name is Juan. I am just one reader and I am coming to you with a reading wrap-up for the first and only 3 books that I have read so far this year. By the way, if you hear something panting or moving around, it's my dog. He's joining me right now and he's one crazy bastard. ¿Dónde está Coco? Ahí está Coco! So he's right here with me and it's very hot here in Mexico City, so expect some panting and some tail noises. Anyway, so 2020 has been a crazy year. I think everybody will agree with me on this one. It's been a crazy year, not only because of the coronavirus and everything that's currently going on, but for me personally, it's a year that has helped me build a lot of character. A lot of plans have gone wrong. A lot of things have changed. I've been very busy. I've been incredibly busy with a lot of work, with a lot of academic responsibilities, academic reading for my classes, and doing everything that my job as a psychoanalyst entails. So it's a lot, but I've also tried to keep myself reading as much as possible, which is not a lot, but it's something. So the first book that I finished this year was Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters. I finished reading this book in February, but it took me like over 2.5 months to read it. So I started reading this back in December and I finished it in February. Now, Tipping the Velvet is a book that I really enjoyed. I think I gave it like 4 stars on Goodreads, and it really is a book that I recommend. Bye. Tipping the Velvet is a historical novel. It's sort of, I guess if I had to choose a genre for it, it would be mystery, thriller, romance, sort of. It's a novel about show business as well, which is something that I love reading about. It's also about differences and outsiders, people who live on the edges of society, people who live on the fringe, and who are castaways in a way. So it's a book that I enjoyed very much. The writing style is lovely. My only problem with it, if you could call it a problem, is that sometimes I thought it was a little bit redundant and there were some entire chapters of it that I think could have been edited out, and the book not only wouldn't have suffered, but it would actually have been improved. It would have been more concise and maybe more solid, maybe more to the point. But regardless of that, it's a book that I thoroughly enjoyed. I just love immersing myself in a good Sarah Waters, Dickensian, Victorian kind of yarn, and her writing style is just lovely to get immersed into. So I thoroughly recommend that one. If you have not read Sarah Waters, I would recommend starting with either that one or Fingersmith, because both of them are very engrossing and very thrilling, especially Fingersmith. Fingersmith is just crazy roller coaster adventure kind of action. Okay, so, a ver, ya, out, bye, out. Excuse my dog. Now, the second book that I finished reading this year, and it only took me like half a day to read it because it's like a short story or a very short novella, is The Tiger by Joel Dicker. So Joel Dicker is a Swedish, I don't know where he's from, but he's a European writer. Yeah, he was born in Switzerland. And he is the very famous author of the super famous bestseller, The Truth About the Harry Caber Affair, which is one of my favorite novels in the crime noir, mystery thriller genre. It's just a spectacular thriller and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a very addictive novel. And it was my favorite novel of 2016. So, This book, The Tiger, is actually a short story that he had written when he was much younger, like when he was extremely young. I think he was a teenager or maybe very, very young in his very early 20s. And he submitted this story for a contest or prize, and it was dismissed because of his age, because the judges didn't actually believe that someone so young had written this. So now that he is super famous, this has been republished or released, and it was recently translated to Spanish, El Tigre. And it's a beautifully illustrated book, very, very pretty edition from Alfaguara. And it's really very beautifully illustrated, really striking illustrations all the way through the book. It is sort of a fairy tale or fable inspired story. If you enjoy fairy tales, I think you would do well to read this. If you enjoy magical realism or fabulist fiction, I think that's the term. It's a term that I've heard over at Mercedes channel from Mercy's Bookish Musings. I think that's the name of her channel. I think something like this would be enjoyed by people who like magical realism, fables, fabulist fiction, and fairy tales. It is very short, and you can read it in like 20 minutes. I liked this well enough, but it just left me a little bit cold because of all the buzz that is around this book, and you know what's been said about this book, and Joel Dicker having been too young to be admitted into this contest. That whole thing sort of put me into a mindset of expecting more. So putting my expectations way too high for this one, and it's a good enough story. I think it's good. It's just, it didn't blow me away. So I gave it 3 stars, but again, I think it's good if you just lower your expectations or just keep your expectations at ground zero. And finally, the book that I really wanted to talk to you about, because it's the book that I finished last night, The Parasites by Daphne du Maurier. Oh man, this is such an interesting book. And the same thing that happened to me with Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier has happened to me now again with this one. And what I mean by that is, when I read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, I thought, this is a wonderful book, but it is very flawed and it's very imperfect for me personally, but I still freaking loved it. And the same thing has happened to me again with this. The Parasites is essentially a character study. There's very little plot in it. Like, there is a plot and there is a story, but it's a book that you read for the characters. It is 330 pages long, and it took me a long while to get through it. Not because the writing is necessarily dense or boring or heavy, but it is a book that you want to take in very small, slow doses, because it's not about the rollicking adventure story that you might find in some other books like Tipping the Velvet or some other Du Mauriers. The Parasites is about 3 characters, 3 siblings whose lives we follow, and we follow in different timelines. We go back in time and we explore their childhoods together and apart, and then we follow their present situations both together and apart. And it's a very peculiar family and a very strange family history, because they come from a family in which their parents were both performers. The mother was a dancer, a very, very, very famous dancer, like Maria Callas. She was a singer, but like that kind of level of fame and popularity. And then the father was a very famous baritone, operatic baritone singer. So very, very strange, bohemian, artistic kind of family dynamic. And now we follow their stories as they are adults. And two of them Maria and Niall have a very, very, very charged romantic, even erotic relationship. So it's a very strange dynamic and very strange characters, but I love that. I love complicated, even pathological characters who come from these weird backgrounds. So if you enjoy something, or if you're looking for something that you can enjoy slowly, but that will for sure entice you in its weirdness and creepiness almost, I would definitely recommend The Parasites. And I do have to say, the first 100 pages of this book are very, very fast. And then in the middle, we start going back in time and we explore their histories through flashbacks, and it's a little bit more dense and much slower. But then when we reach the final 50 pages or 70 pages of the book, the rhythm really picks up, and the ending is really something. So if you've never read Du Maurier, what are you doing? Daphne du Maurier is the fucking queen of BookTube and of my corner of BookTube. I love du Maurier. I've only read Rebecca, My Cousin Rachel, which is my favorite novel by her. I have read this one, which is another novel. I have read two of her short story collections, The Birds and Other Stories, and another one. I'm forgetting what else I've read by her. But yeah, The Parasites is just another really great jewel in my collection or my history of reading Daphne du Maurier. It's a very strange book because, again, it's nothing like I had really read before. Not quite. It's very reminiscent of some other things, but it's not quite exactly like anything else I've read before. So that makes it very special. So yeah, if you enjoy this kind of thing, this is a great jewel. If you can find a copy of The Parasites, this is a good one. So, what have you read so far this year? What are you reading right now? What are you planning on reading for the following quarantine pandemic situation? I would love to know. Thanks for watching. I am Just One Reader, and I will see you on the next video.